Texas is the biggest beekeeping state in the United States, like by far.
I'm not surprised. We have a lot of room to keep bees.
Yeah.
It's a lot of room.
And a lot of tax advantages if you have more than 5 acres to having bees on your property.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that either. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for doing this. I really, really appreciate you taking time to come visit me and get your haircut. I really appreciate this. Now, do you say it Tara or Tara?
Tara.
Tara. Mm-hmm. I feel like that's one of those names. It goes either way. Tomato, tomato.
It does. Yeah. I feel like most Taras in the South are Taras and most Taras in the North are Taras. I think Gone with the Wind. I think there's that.
Pecan.
Yeah.
You know, I did a poll. It's like, is it pronounced pecan or pecan? And I spelled it exactly the same. And everyone kept phonetically spelling, like, when you say pecan, it was great. And I was like, it was so fun, the interaction of like everyone's like, and then there was no general consensus about, everyone thought if you're from the South, you say pecan. Mm. But then people were like, no, if you're from the North, you say pecan.
Yes. It's not consistent across the board.
No, and I always thought pecan was more of a Southern thing because the that, the quote, the Southern drawl would be more.
We love our vowels. Yeah, I'm a born and bred Texan. We've always said pecan.
It's been settled here, folks.
That's right.
All right. So, fill me in about your hair. So, when's the last time you got your haircut?
I don't remember.
Oh, that's a great place to begin.
Okay, so I always waver between like very long hair, like Little House on the Prairie girl long hair, or like short, right? I've always hated the kind of like in between shoulder length.
Okay.
But my hair is always growing really fast. It's always growing real fast. It has stopped growing really fast. Maybe it's my age. I don't know. I don't think it has to do with postpartum because my kid is 3. So, but we're just like hovering here. Okay. So I've realized I have to learn to embrace this like mid-length because I think this is where I am.
For a while?
Yeah, it's growing so slowly.
Okay.
So I think this mid-length is kind of maybe up to be where I'm at for a while. I don't know. It's peculiar. So
a couple of things to consider. I'm not a doctor. I just play one on Instagram sometimes. I don't do that at all. But from having women tell me of what's going on post-pregnancy, even several years after, is it could just be like some minerals deficiencies. Something that is very common. One of the reasons why I think everyone feels that their hair grows faster is when they're taking prenatal pills. The prenatal pills don't make somebody more fertile. It just helps with supporting.
Yeah. It's always grown really fast, not just like when I was pregnant. But yeah, or it could be like perimenopausal stuff. I'm 43. I'm right there. I don't know.
It could be that. But I also know that sometimes when some of my clients that went back on the prenatal post-baby, their hair and nails grew longer and stronger again because the baby can take out.
They take a lot.
Yes.
Even at 3.
Yes. Right now, it's probably a lot of sleep and patience.
Just a lot of like
everything.
Whatever you want. I'd like it to be different.
Of course.
I love that I run a business, a very successful business, and that I found myself asking my 3-year-old if I had permission to sing along to my favorite song in the morning.
What song is it?
Love Texas country.
Okay.
And I'm very proud of the music genre, like appreciation I've been able to cultivate for my 3-year-old.
Okay.
We were 3 Freddie Mercurys for Halloween. He's a big Queen fan.
Cool.
Big ZZ Top. He likes to say, I'm a Texas boy, like those ZZ Top guys. But cannot seem to get him to latch on to the Texas country. I did get him excited about a Waylon Jennings record last week. So I think the record...
The vinyl
is the way to go because it's a new tool. It's a new toy. Yeah. And so I've told him, well, we only have Waylon records. So if we want to listen to the records, it's got to be Waylon.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my friends got my oldest for his birthday a record player. And since we knew he was getting that, everyone got different vinyl. My oldest has, he has a predisposition to like more of the music I like. I did not force this on him, but he is a huge fan of heavy metal. So like he has Metallica, he has some Motley Crue records. We didn't get him anything too crazy. No Pantera, no Cannibal Corpse, no Slipknot. But he does like that music. And then my youngest one is a huge fan of outlaw country music. So we're playing like, Mama Tried. They love that song. So like, why didn't he just listen to his mama?
Why didn't
I don't know.
he just listened to his mama?
It's actually a really great song for the kids to realize, like, look, when we tell you to do something, it's not really trying to control you. We just don't want you to end up like the kid in the song. And they're like, we don't want to be the kid in the song. We don't want to be turning 21 in prison without parole. And it's so funny how the 5 and 7, their brains immediately jumped up. We don't listen enough. That's us. So it's skater straight for the little kids. All right. So Tara, fill me in about your hair. So it's this length. It's going to be at this length for a while, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think so.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
So what is it about this length that you've historically not been drawn towards?
Good question. It just feels a little pedestrian.
Okay.
Like if it's really long, that's like dramatic, and I can do like fun,
kind of bold
things, updo things.
Yeah.
I love to braid. And then if it's short, that feels like you're making a statement and dramatic. And this kind of in between just feels a little like, vanilla.
Okay.
But that's where we are. And I really just, it's here. I need to like learn to be okay with this in between.
Well, let's try and figure out how to throw some chocolate chips and some caramel swirl in your vanilla.
Okay. Does it help that like, I feel like so many times when I'm at this sort of like shoulder length, I've had on more than one occasion, someone talk me into layers. And then I walk out and I'm like, I have the Rachel Friends 1990, what was that? 92?
I don't
haircut.
But the 90s are back. The 90s are back.
Do you know what haircut I'm talking about?
I remember because when that show was on the air, every girl in my high school had this haircut.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm very aware of that haircut. So let's try to avoid that. I'm just combing out your waves and curls just to see what we got.
Oh, it's not thick, but it's a lot. I have a lot of hair.
Yeah, hair density's high.
And it's always been very stick straight. Mm-hmm. And then in the last year, I got this weird little patch of like wave situation just right here. Like the texture of just right here has changed. Weird things going on in my hair in my 40s post baby. I never lost my hair though after I stopped breastfeeding. I never had the like, or maybe I have so much hair. I don't even know that I would have noticed, honestly.
Yeah, my wife also didn't lose hair, and she didn't gain hair during her pregnancy. She also she breastfed, but she did for like 2 years for each boy, so it was like 4 years. Stop. It's tough on her. I don't know. I don't know why some lose and some don't, but you do have a lot of hair. It's nice. You do have that little wiggle right back.
Yeah, right there, right? It's like nowhere else.
It's like, let's just put a wiggle. You're not against layers. It sounds like you're against that Rachel haircut of layers.
Yeah. Okay. And maybe I just like didn't know what I was doing with the layers that I was given. I don't want to like place blame. Felt like a little Rachel-y, but maybe I was doing something wrong.
Well, the Rachel haircut is one of the most classic haircuts. It's not difficult. It's really just everything is brought up to the top and it's cut square through the top. And I'm saying this because if you're a hairdresser listening, you'll know that this is one of the easiest haircuts. And he got very popular about doing a very classic haircut. There was nothing new. It's just right time, right person, right everything. That haircut he had done like Cameron Diaz in the movie The Mask did take off. Took off on her, on Jennifer Aniston. So, and I understand like why people like that. It seems to give a lot more volume, a lot more height and shape like that. But if that's not the look that you're going for, then it's the wrong cut completely. What I do want to know though is, if you get out of the shower and your hair is wet, what are you doing styling with your hair? Like, what is your process?
I hate blow drying my hair.
Okay.
So I'm lucky that it dries really straight, and that, like, if I had curls, I've never had curls other than this weird little weave. So I often don't blow dry it. I'll do it and just let it air dry. And then I deal with it later with a straight iron and a wand. I want it.
My wife's completely, she's the same way.
I'm like, it doesn't, no matter what it looks like, I can get the same style with a wand, whether I let it. It'd look nicer if I blow dried it.
Yeah.
That's.
And do you ever wear your hair up?
Mm-hmm.
How often?
I mean, there's a lot of ponytails in my life.
Where do you place your ponytail?
I like a high.
Okay, cool.
High bun situation.
Awesome. So the reason I'm asking is that the higher you wear your ponytail, the shorter these pieces can become. So when they lay down, if you want them to frame your face, because right now they're pretty much behind.
Yes.
And that could be something that could just fill it up.
I also have this widow's peak.
Yeah.
She's not so fun. And I have finally embraced that we aren't side parting our hair anymore. And we aren't wearing skinny jeans. And I've given those up because that's what we're doing these days. Okay. But it's sort of awkward. So, like, yeah, maybe if I had shorter pieces here, this would, like, I don't know. I wish it would, like, go down.
I think it would be nice to have some shorter pieces that frame your face. Especially if you were to, like, wear your hair up, let's say, and you're like, you wore low ponytail.
Yeah.
And then these pieces would fall down.
Yes.
Because that has become a style all on its own.
Mm-hmm.
So are you okay with that?
Yes.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
I want to take your hair dry because you wear your hair dry and I can actually see the density too. Because right up in here, your hair likes to separate a little bit. And this piece right here makes me think if we wore this shorter, it would separate with intention versus separating like it's trying to like break away and be its own thing.
Okay.
So you cool with that idea?
Yeah.
Awesome. So I'm thinking, let's go through and get these guys to be somewhere like right in through this area.
Uh-huh.
So hit below your cheekbone, but above your jaw.
Okay.
And it'll just kind of linger right in this area. So that way, if you put a little bit of a loose band with your wad, you'll get a little kick in there. If you round brushed it, it would look fine. If you flat iron it, I would flat iron it going away from your face like that, giving like a long bend versus a waved curl.
Okay.
And then I think from there, working the layers to be loose and soft, nothing overly structured. What I mean by that is nothing where you're going to have, if you were to pull your hair out, you're going to have a lot of zigzaggy soft lines because when your hair lays down, it blends in.
Okay.
If I do a hard line, that's when people go like, oh, I hate my layers. They look, quote, steppy, chunky. It's because they're blunt. And when they fall, when you have blunt lines on straight hair, not styled, it looks like chunk.
Yeah.
But if you lift it all up and you see these, looks like, instead of it being hard, it's more like this. It's a softer edge. And that seems to work really well on hair that is naturally straight, that does lend itself air dry. So the less hard the line is, usually the better for air dry. Okay. And it also makes blending for style a lot easier too. But I'm looking like, let's just go through and knock this guy off. And then I don't want to play with your length. I do want to go through and make sure that your ends are even and clean and look healthy. But I don't want to bring your length up. The goal is to not deliberately bring your length up. But will your length come up? Absolutely. It's going to come up because we already have a little bit of a haircut. Even if we're just taking a little bit off, it is going to come up. I really want to focus on getting what you see, what I see together, what we see right here. This is where I really want most of the drama, if you would call it that, to see going through here. Okay. So with that, because back here, sounds great. I actually think this, you can't see this, but I think what happens is if you're trying to, like, let's say you do want to get your hair to go longer, like another 4 more inches. You're not going to see how this looks, but you're always going to be reminded how your hair looks when you see it in the mirror. So if we can get this to look nice and you like the way you look with it, you're not going to feel this resistance to the length. Okay. And then if you decide to go longer, you can always do that. Cool.
Sounds great.
Awesome. All right. All right, let me put a cape on you.
Okay.
Awesome.
Great.
And we're back. All right, so let's have some fun here. So Tara, you're a beekeeper.
Beekeeper.
How long have you been a beekeeper?
Over a decade.
So you've been a beekeeper for a decade.
Mm-hmm.
2 questions. What got you into beekeeping? And what were you doing before beekeeping?
Graduated college, and my first job out of college was with the government, and I worked in intelligence. So
Like CIA shit?
exactly.
Really?
Mhm.
Oh, no.
Yeah. I did.
Were you listening to everybody's conversation?
I was not NSA.
Okay.
I was CIA. I was CIA. Yeah. So I worked for the government for a decade.
I got to pause you right there.
Mm-hmm.
Don't they have something in the CIA called the farm?
Uh-huh.
So you went from a farm to a farm. Okay. Just wanted to make sure. All right. Got it.
Good knowledge. Yeah. So I worked for the government in a few different capacities for a decade, but spent all of my time focused on, a lot of Afghanistan. So this was in a post 9/11 world, right?
Yeah.
And so I graduated college in 2003. So that was right when the agency suddenly had a ton of money and was doing a ton of hiring. Mm-hmm. So spent most of that decade focused on Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Iraq, and kind of saw the wars and the quote unquote war on terror from several angles during that time, from oversight to congressional oversight to policy to actual like intelligence operations on the ground. And so I did that again for a decade. And then towards the end of that decade, I was really looking for, I didn't know what I wanted, but I didn't want to do that anymore. I was looking for something different. And so this was before remote work was even a thing. And I convinced the government to let me work part-time from Texas, because I was stationed in DC and I was spending a lot of time in Afghanistan and Pakistan.
You actually got to go there.
Oh yeah, a lot. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so first off, I've never been to DC, and I've always wanted to go to DC.
It's great.
I've been a political junkie since I was a kid, and I view that like the way people view college sports. They just look at their Sweet 16 and go, "Here's the two they're going to end up in the bracket." And I have friends who worked on both sides of the aisle, so I'm a fanatic about it. I've had friends who were deployed in Afghanistan and stuff like that. They have the craziest stories. I can only imagine what happens if you're CIA. Is it like being like a spy? Is it like what we see on TV? Are the spies like that? There's that one series with Claire Danes, right? And everyone said like, that's the most realistic it is. I can't remember which show it is.
The name is escaping me, but I've not watched any of them.
Okay.
And the reason is because then like I was, I had a cover at one point in my life, and they do a great job of when you leave the government, they roll it back so that you can, at least you've got like a resume item.
Got it. Yeah.
But I just always found that if I said, I don't know, I haven't seen it, then I can not comment. You know what I mean?
Totally understandable. I know where you're going with this.
I mean, I was just having this conversation with my husband over the weekend because we were in Vegas.
Okay.
And I can't tell you the number of times that like, I don't talk often about my background. It's not a secret, but I just don't talk about it. And the number of times that it will come up in some way because someone's Googled me or something. And then someone claims, and it's always a man, no offense, it is always a man that like claims some role or that they were paid by the government to spy for the government. And it's happened like half a dozen times. Mm-hmm. And every time it's total nonsense and ridiculousness. Mm-hmm. I've always told my husband, like, people that were really involved in these efforts
never say
no. You're just trained and and understand the importance of like being discreet. And so when any starts talking too much, I'm always like,
I had a client, and he was a cop, and he always wanted to be an undercover cop. And this was at a time when like I would say like having a lot of tattoos openly probably wasn't the norm for cops at that time. He had, he had to keep them covered. He was very good about keeping them covered. But one day he just stopped showing up for haircuts. And then I reached out to somebody who worked with him in his precinct, who was also a client of mine. I was like, have you seen such and such? Mm-hmm. She's like, I haven't. Matter of fact, I haven't seen him for 6 months. She's like, she goes, have you seen him? I go, no, he would come in every 3 weeks, like clockwork. Where is he? She goes, maybe he got that job. I'm imagining he's off doing the craziest undercover work. And he was like, he always wanted to. And I remember,
I hope so.
I hope so.
I hope so. I'd love that for him.
I hope so. And I'm not going to say his name. I'm not going to rat him out.
Of course.
But there's a part of me that's like, I've thought about like texting him, but knowing my luck, I would text him at the wrong time.
Right.
And he'd be like, you hear like the phone like, doo, 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 doo. Like, what's that? No, nothing. Not me. Not me at all. Yeah. So I get that. You want to get out of that world.
Yes. I'm a born and bred Texan. I really wanted to come back to Texas. I just was looking for something a little bit different.
Okay.
I mean, truth be told, I don't love this about myself for reasons why I don't know. There's a reason to be ashamed about it. But a lot of it was that I wanted to come back to Texas because I wanted to find a mate. Ask any woman that lives in DC how it's the worst place in the world to date. I mean, it's up there with New York City. It's real rough.
I've heard.
So I wanted a reason to come back. So I worked out this deal where they let me remote work from Texas, which was unbelievable to get them to agree to that because this wasn't something that was done in 2015. 2015. So I got to live where I wanted. So I moved to Austin and was living this life where I was in Austin for 3 weeks out of the month. And then I would go to DC for a week a month. Cool. And then every couple of months, I'd go back to Afghanistan for anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 months. And I just, once I got the place, I got to live here. And then it just provided a lot more clarity of like, okay, maybe it wasn't the place so much that was making me unhappy because I'm still not finding what I'm looking for. Maybe I need to find a new job, right? It's just like a process of elimination of like, what's really not working here? And so I changed my locations and I still wasn't vibing every day. And I thought, okay, I think I need a new job. And so I actually started applying I applied to, you name the like tech company I interviewed there. I did something like 36 interviews in 6 weeks. And I just could not imagine a world in which I worked any of those jobs.
And tech bros are completely different.
I mean,
people. I mean, a lot of people talk crap about tech bros, but I feel like you can kind of spot them out. They all dress the same.
I'll never forget. I was in an interview with a known tech company that everyone would know, that I won't say the name of, but everyone would know them. And there was a guy across the table and he was very young. I was in my early 30s at the time and he was probably mid 20s, 6 or 7 years younger than me. And his kind of question out of the box was, tell me about a time when you've had to be flexible, which is a fine question. But I just remember looking at him and thinking, you have my resume in front of you, where I told you I spent the last decade in and out of war zones. One, don't you know what the answer is going to be? And two, you don't have anything more interesting to ask me given my resume? And I was like, I just can't with this. I need to be in a space where I could be creative and like think out of the box. And I'm not given this list of 20. I can't do that.
I mean, you just told me Afghanistan and during the time and like my brain wants to go to like all the rumors about the poppy fields and all this other stuff.
Yeah. I mean,
which is like a whole nother rabbit hole in itself, but I was like, wow, wow. When I worked in Afghanistan during in a war zone, I had lots of opportunities to practice my flexibility.
So anyway, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I found that, when I was in Austin, I just wanted to embrace Austin and do Austin-y things, whatever that means.
I was just going to ask you, because people say that, because, I'm not from Texas. I'm originally from Southern California.
Mm-hmm.
And so people go like, oh, you're doing the Austin thing. You're growing your hair out. And I'm like, what? I did not know that long hair. Yeah. Like, what does that mean?
Well, Austin has changed a lot.
I can imagine.
In the last 30 years. Mm-hmm. But, coming from Washington, D.C., where, I feel like there's a lot of different types of currency, right? In New York, the currency is literal money. In LA, the currency is how you look, right? And then in DC, the currency is power. And so you live to work and work to live in DC, and every conversation that you have has to do with work. Everyone.
I feel like I can see that. I can see that New York being money. I can see physical currency in LA, and also would say social currency as like a name dropping thing. But I think that probably runs congruent with all three.
For sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because they're all connected. Right. Yeah.
I had a client, her husband is an academics professor, and she and him lived in DC. And I was like, what was it like living in DC? And since they're in the university, they have to do all this, grants, and they meet all these politicians. And I go, so what's it like dealing with all these politicians? She goes, do you know what politics is, right? And I go, no. She goes, it's the Hollywood for ugly people.
Yes.
And she goes, just look at the ones that get the most face time. They're the best looking out of all of them. And that totally shifted my viewpoint.
Yeah, it's a very common phrase used in DC. So it's just it's a very peculiar place to be in that, like, name any Midwestern city. Sure, everyone has their character, but you're not going to see the stark difference between any city in the Midwest compared to the New York, DC, and LA, right? They're just very, very different ratings. So coming from DC to Austin, where I didn't know what any of my friends did for a living. Anybody. No, not in Austin. No, anybody did it for a living. That's just not something that you talked about.
You don't lead in with,
no.
Hi, my name's Tara.
Where in DC, you're for people that are in and around politics and political appointees, their entire lives can change every 4 years based on who the administration is. And so by necessity, everyone lives and dies by where they work. So that was just such a stark difference. So when I was in DC, it was very different. And then when I was in Austin, I just wanted to do like cool, weird, fun things that I wouldn't have the chance to do in DC. So
like Eeyore Fest.
Yes, exactly. Walk around naked at noon in a park. And so there was this class on Groupon when Groupon was still, it still actually is around. I get calls from them all the time. But there was a class on Groupon, and it was a beekeeping class.
Really?
And I was like, I didn't even know that was a thing. That's like a thing that you can do like in your house. Like I didn't even understand. And so a friend of mine from the coffee shop signed up and went to this beekeeping class, and her granddad had been a beekeeper. So she had a little bit of like knowledge. I had none. Mm-hmm. And we walked out of there and we were just blown away by how cool bees were. Like all the nuances and all of the, that the colony lives and dies by pheromones. And it's just incredibly fascinating. We just couldn't stop talking about it. Mm-hmm. And so I started a couple of hives with a friend in a backyard over in the Zilker Park neighborhood. I was fascinated that different flowers make different honey. So the grocery store tells us that honey is a commodity and it's all the same flavor or color, texture, and it's not. And so different flowers will make different honeys. And I didn't know that when I became a beekeeper. And I thought, it would be so cool if different neighborhoods had hives, and then you could have neighborhood honey, right? You could have a Hyde Park, and then you could have the East Side, and you could have the 04. And so I had this idea. And again, simultaneously, I was like looking for an exit strategy. And I was like, I'm going to start a honey company.
Sounds sweet.
Is so absurd.
No, it's not. It's really cool.
And it worked out, but like very easily I would not be here, and I could be sitting at a coffee shop next to you and be like, yeah, this one time I decided to be a beekeeper and start a honey company. And what a disaster that was, right?
It could. And you could come up with so many puns. Like, I tried it. It stung. I didn't like it anymore.
Right.
It's a sweet business.
Right.
You know?
So I quit my job. And another funny thing about the DC versus Austin connection is I was terrified to tell my friends in DC because I thought they're going to think she has lost her mind. Yeah. Right? Just fair. And just what's wrong with her? And then I thought all my Austin friends were just going to be so supportive because that's the culture in Austin, right? Work-life balance, do what you love what you do.
Yeah.
And it was the opposite.
Really?
All of my DC friends were so impressed, so jealous. It's all they could talk about. I had a gal corner me in a bathroom in my final days in the office. And she said, I just think that's so cool. I've always wanted to quit my job and buy some land and get some fruit trees and start a cidery. And I was like, you should do that. You should quit your job and start a cidery. Yeah. And so it's like, turns out everyone in DC is just secretly pining to be like a farmer. Yeah.
Wait, okay. So like what you just described is that you thought your friends in Austin would be the most supportive and the most excited for you to start this new venture as a beekeeper. Meanwhile, you had this hesitation, this reluctancy to tell all of your CIA DC people.
Right.
By the way, I'm going to become a beekeeper. And I think this is so true with so many people that we tell ourselves a story and narratives to be true. And we live and die by that story we tell ourselves when the reality hasn't even happened. And we're so fearful of the things.
That's anxiety, right?
Well, yeah, I think it's another reminder that the things we tell ourselves are not true, but they feel true to us.
Yeah. I mean, taking any sort of leap, any sort of change is so difficult. Some difficult for others.
Yeah.
More than others, some more than others. But I try to always think about, and I remember thinking about this during this huge leap of quitting this job. And by the way, all my Austin friends simultaneously, who I thought were going to be so excited for me, were like, why would you do that? Because from their perspective, right, what they don't know, but what their perspective is they're thinking you have this awesome job in DC. You do all this important work, all this meaningful work, get paid well. Why would you leave that? But I always tell people, I have a lot of folks that people send to me that, are interested in starting a business or doing something new or quitting their job. And I always try to share and remember myself that what is the worst case scenario? And it's easy for us to make up some worst case scenarios that aren't actually true. Yeah. But for me, the worst case scenario really was, I just go back to my old job. I mean, I had the highest secret level clearance, top secret clearance that you can get in DC. You can't not have a job with that level of clearance. Like
Q level clearance? I read a lot of stuff. Sorry.
So I was just like, there's just no way. You would just go back to what you did before. And that's not the case for everybody, but identifying what the worst case scenario is and learning, can I live with that worst case scenario?
Yeah.
You know?
I think also too, is that I'm starting from just talking to people who've had a change midlife, not midlife crisis. When I say midlife, in the middle of where they are, they've had a change, right? Everyone goes through like, well, what's the worst thing that can happen? And the worst thing, and I think the worst that can happen changes depending on the responsibilities you have at that time too.
Yeah. If you have kids or don't have kids, that's a whole different ballgame.
That's more factors to factor in. Yeah. Absolutely. But right now it's you.
I was single. I didn't have kids. I had a really nice savings and I had a great backup plan. I mean, and that I could just go back to my old job.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. So, I quit my job and then started Two Hives.
Two Hives, which is the name of your business.
Yes, Two Hives Honey. Mm-hmm.
Two Hives.
And it comes from, I started those original Two Hives with a friend. I mean, we have, over the years, I've had people say, you only have 2 hives? And I'm like, no, we have.
How many do you have total?
We have 300 to 350 that we manage depending on the day, which Seems like a lot. It is a lot, but that's really small in the world of beekeeping. We're definitely small.
Now I know how you got to where you are. I think it's awesome. I think that's really cool that you decided to take that chance and that leap and do something completely. And what I also love is it was like, hey, this seems fun and this is like a passionate thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if because you didn't tell me this, I don't know. Did you go through and do like a P&L? Like, hey, if I do a business in 2 years, 5 years, 7 years, like, did you go through and like strategically plan it out? Or did you just kind of like throw caution in and go, look, I'm going to give this a shot. I have no fucking clue what I'm doing, but I'm going to have fun doing this. If it turns out bad, I'm going back.
Yes. There was no business plan. I mean, there was some free, the city of Boston, I don't know if they still do it, but at the time they had some like free business coaching that you could do if you owned a business. And I was definitely taking advantage of those resources. But no, before I quit my job, there was no business planning. I had secured a job though. So I knew very little, but at least I knew that I had more to learn about beekeeping. I mean, I'd had a couple of hives for a few months. Like I wasn't equipped. And so there's some beekeepers are what are called bee breeders. So they actually breed queen bees and produce
Just gonna ask about
bees. So if you were going to become a beekeeper, you would buy bees from these beekeepers. It's a whole business. Texas is the biggest beekeeping state in the United States, like by far.
I'm not surprised. We have a lot of room to keep bees.
Yeah.
It's a lot of room. A lot of real estate.
And a lot of tax advantages if you have more than 5 acres to having bees on your property.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that either.
So before I quit my job, I lined up this job with this bee breeder, one of the best known bee breeders in Texas, in East Texas. And so, I quit my job and then came back to Texas and then went to East Texas and did blue collar work for months for spring season. Learned more about the craft and the trade and did really hard work, got stung a whole lot. I remember as the folks I was working with, they weren't at this business doing this line of work because they chose it. They were doing it because it paid well and it was a job they could get. Right. And here I am in this very privileged position. I went to Duke University. I'm from a tiny little town in rural West Texas. I'm a first generation college graduate, but I still did go to Duke University and I came back from DC to like launch myself into this world and quit my job. And I'm working. I remember being terrified that these folks were going to learn my background and be like, what the hell are you doing here? Right. And I just did not want them to know that I went to college, much less that I went to Duke University.
I mean, this has the makings of a Hallmark movie. Girl from small town goes big city, comes back to the small town. Did you meet the love of your life in this event as well? Because this is like...
I mean, have you seen the movie The Beekeeper?
No.
That came out in the last year?
No, I haven't.
About the operative that his cover is he's a beekeeper?
No. Is this about you?
I'm just saying, I've been on the Today Show. I've had a lot of media. I feel pretty confident someone saw my story and was like, that will make a great movie. But you know what would make it better? Let's make it a man.
Oh, well.
Yeah, it was a big movie that came out last year. Oh, I can't remember that guy's. Very famous people. I can't remember that guy's name.
Can I tell you that?
I never saw it.
I honestly have not paid attention to a lot of movies. I have not enjoyed a lot of most recent movies. I don't know. After a certain time, I'm just kind of like.
Well, I think that I was talking about this with friends last week because I was watching 10 Things I Hate About You, which is like one of the most quotable movies from my time in college. And we were talking about how people don't quote movies anymore. It's not a thing that you do. We have memes instead.
Yeah.
And I was like, I think it's because we're not all on the same spectrum in terms of what we're seeing because there's hundreds of thousands of things you can stream at any given point. It's not like it was when we were growing up where like there was 5 movies at the movie theater and you watched those 5 movies.
Yeah, it's like, have you seen Super Troopers?
Yeah.
All right, meow.
Yeah,
exactly. It's like that.
Exactly. But people don't quote movies anymore. And that made me kind of sad because quotable movies is one of my favorite things.
Well, it also kind of would tell you if you have a lot in common real quickly.
Right. The recognition or lack thereof kind of puts you in a place in someone's mind.
Yeah. Did we just become best friends? You're like, I know that movie. Or Dude Abides. There's these lines.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. So this is The Beekeeper. Now I'm going to put that on watch list.
But if the Hallmark movie comes out about a woman that quits her job and moves to a rural part of the state, and then I'm seriously going to have to start knocking on some doors and be like, come on, you guys, I need some royalties out of this. But so I did that, and I worked in East Texas, and I came back to Austin, and that's when I really started investing the time to build and grow the business beyond a name, which is all I had for a while.
Hey, a name is sometimes the best thing.
Yep.
Can we talk about bees?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. I was informed that eating honey, apparently to some people, is not part of a vegan diet. Have you heard about this?
Yes. Hardcore, hardline vegans won't eat honey.
Because it's a product.
And they won't use beeswax candles either.
I didn't even think about the beeswax candles. Mm-hmm. Honey is made from bees.
Yes, they gather nectar from flowers and they cure it, and it goes through a process, and
but it's not like eggs. It's not like
no
from that. Like they make it.
Yes,
it'd be no different.
Yeah.
To me, it sounds like they're like little. Like it'd be like us making tofu.
Yes.
So bees are essentially making honey the way we would make tofu, but yet it's considered.
Vegans consider it's an exploitation of bees. And to be fair, there are beekeeping practices that aren't great, aren't sustainable, and aren't ethical.
They don't get like holidays.
Keep working. Yeah. With any form of ag, there's ways that you can do it that is respectful of the animal, but no bees are killed in the process of producing honey. So I think for now, there's a lot of misconceptions, dare I say, lies in the world of veganism, where people just truly are wrong about how honey is produced.
Well, let's sort them out.
But for like our operation, there's no bees that are killed in the process. It's not like we take all their honey and then burn the hive to the ground. We are certainly apparently in some very cold states, they don't think it's worth. Yeah, cold weather states, they don't think it's worth overwintering the bees. Okay. I don't know to what extent that happens, but this is looking great, by the way.
You noticing the difference?
Yeah, I can't believe you're doing it, and my hair's not wet.
So dry hair cutting is something I've been doing for a while before it became something you read in the Cosmo, like ask your hairdresser to do a dry haircut. The thing is, what would happen is, and lately especially, clients will come in, they go, this is how my hair normally looks. I go, okay, well, let me cut it the way you style it. I didn't style it like you did. So now we have a predictable outcome versus your hair wet. I don't know how it's going to where it is. And then I'm cutting what you've already done. So essentially, theoretically, the hypothesis is that you've styled your hair. You don't have to change the way you styled your hair. Now what we've done is we've changed the cut. Yeah. I look at it like clothes, like pants are pants, right? And then we're just changing the cut of the pants. We're changing the color of the pants. Like that's how it is. Like we don't need to overcut the way you put pants on, like backwards or upside down or something. And so when you have your hair already styled, it gives me an idea of where your technical skill level is on styling your hair. And it goes, okay, can I work with this? Answer is yes. What can we use? And I'm already looking your hair is already going to have it already looks fuller. Doesn't look as flat, Right. It has more movement. And all I'm seeing is okay, I just want to break these little pieces up. I want to get a little bit more contouring right in through here so it kicks back. But I just want to kind of break that up just a little bit down here because this side has less hair because this part is slightly on the side. That's fine. I'm just going through and just going to break that up. Yeah. And then I'm just going to, blow off the hair. And I'm just going to take a large curl and I'm just going to wrap around so we can get more of that wand effect.
Great. Well, that's great. But yeah, so there's all sorts of practices that aren't great, and we can get into this if you like, but honestly, necessary for our food system.
They are. They are necessary, is what you're saying.
Unfortunately, yeah. So, but at my small scale, things that we don't do, right, that big scale beekeepers or big beekeeping, if you will, are going to be doing is treatment for pests and diseases. We are treatment free. I don't believe that you have to be treatment free to do it ethically. I think there's a way to do it ethically, but you want to treat a problem. Whereas large scale beekeepers are going to throw really serious heavy chemicals on based on a calendar.
Now,
right.
from everything I've read is that a lot of our pesticides are really bad for bees.
Yes.
If we know that these things are really bad for bees, and from everything I remember in biology class in high school, is that bees are pretty essential for everything sort of growing around. Am I correct on this too? Am I being too?
No,
Am I painting a broad stroke with a big brush?
No,
when I say that?
and the reason why is because honeybees are not native to North America. They were not.
I didn't know that.
Europe, Asia. Now, there's hundreds of species of bees that are native to Texas, but they're not honey producing bees. There's mason bees, bumblebees, leafcutter bees.
We had a couple. We actually have like
all sorts of different
little things that they wanted to.
Oh yeah, for the masons and the leafcutters. Yeah. So there's all sorts of native bees. Bumblebees are the one native bee that do produce honey, but at such a tiny, tiny amount, they couldn't be kept for those for that product. So they're not native. They were brought here in the 1600s by European settlers, right? Which they are native in Europe, mostly for the products they produce. But
like what regions of Europe? I imagine it's like Provence, like that part.
All over Europe all over. I mean, from Greece to, really all of Europe. All of Europe's going to have bees and honeybees. And there's different subspecies that do better in different climates. Like there's Italians that do better in the warmer weather and have different traits versus like Russian, for example. But the reason they are so important to our food system, so you'll hear people say, without honeybees, we wouldn't have almonds. That's not exactly true. Honeybees don't have to pollinate almonds, but because of the way that we grow food and that we do everything, most all of our food is grown via monoculture. Right. So monoculture is when you have farmers growing one crop for many, many thousands of acres. California is a big state full of monoculture, right? You've got God knows how many acres of almonds up in the valley. And so California grows 80% of the world's almonds, 80. Now, it's not that honeybees have to pollinate almonds. It's that they don't have enough bees occurring naturally in nature to pollinate all those almonds. So they have to drive bees in for the pollination services. And honeybees are the only bees that can be packed on the back of semi-trucks and driven in. So it's not that there's something special about Western European honeybees to pollinate almonds, but rather it's just because of the way that we farm, you have to supplement pollination services with honeybees that can be driven in, and you just can't drive. All these native bees don't live in big colonies that are being driven around on the back of semi-trucks. So that's why they're so important to our food system.
Okay.
And so you've got these bees. Most all beekeepers that make their money off of beekeeping make their money off of pollination services, actually.
Okay.
So you've got a huge percentage of the U.S.'s honeybee colonies that go to California in January to sit on almonds. And so that is not natural in a lot of different ways, but those crops are most always doused with tons of really toxic pesticides, specifically a class of pesticide called neonicotinoids that will stay in the root system of the plant for years to come.
How many years?
And I'm not really sure because I'm told they can last for decades. But then I find it curious that so there's a law in Texas that you can't move fruit trees across county lines without having sprayed them. And so then when you go to, if you ever bought fruit trees at the small plant stores, nurseries in Austin, you'll see signs out, and this is why. And they'll say, pick all the blooms off of this tree for the next 2 years. Because that way you're trying to prevent the pesticide exposure to the bees that would visit the flowers by taking the flowers off. They don't visit the flower, they don't get the exposure.
It just seems like if it's not good and it kills bees, it's probably killing everything. And I always think of they call it the LD50, right? Like the lethal dosage of 50 milligrams, I think it is something like that. Clearly a bee is much smaller than us. But at some point, I can't imagine that it's not doing some sort of like slow, long-term chronic effect, these pesticides being in the ground.
And I mean, it's not good for us, right?
Yeah.
It's not good for us. It's not good for bees. And
how do we know it doesn't go into the water table?
It does. It does.
Oh, so it does.
All these things happen. Yeah. It's real bad. It's real bad. And
I mean, this feels like
that's the status of big industry farming.
I mean, this seems like a more reason to invest more into regenerative farming.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And, we were talking earlier about you had two different perspectives on like whether or not regenerative ag can be done at large scale versus someone that says, no, it absolutely cannot. I don't know the answers to those questions, but I can only be hopeful that really smart people are looking at it and working on it, because this way is not sustainable. It's not healthy for anyone involved. Mm-hmm. The health of the soil, water, us, the health of our families, the health of the pollinators.
I remember reading something, and again, I don't know the accuracy of this, but this is just, I remember reading, and it's, I read it about 12 years ago, so forgive me if I get the data wrong. But it was something about that a lot of the fungus or mushrooms or those fungal things that we have pesticides for, that to kill off that on the things we eat. It was that the structure or the biology of this fungus is actually very similar to a lot of the gut biome that we have in our gut. It's actually like, they're like, for lack of better terms, like cousins. They're not brothers, sisters, but they're twins or cousins. And that they were saying that this stuff over time really messes up your gut, your GI tract, because you're ingesting all these things that are killing fungus and is killing all this stuff that's not great for the crop. However, if it kills the fungus, over time, it also is really hurting you. But again, it's in such small amounts that you don't feel it instantly. It's like years of consuming. And at that time, I did not know anyone. I'd have to find the article if I can even find it. Is it even searchable now? But it was one of those things that made me go like, because I grew up with friends of the family who were organic farmers. And they were talking about, you have to respect the soil. And, they would start farming with one crop, and they would let that rest, and they would go through, do something else.
Right.
And they would keep bouncing back. And, if something was growing a lot, it grew a lot. It didn't yield. And they didn't try to force the thing. And I think looking back, I was that friend of the family had a very big impact on me as an adult when it came to eating and picking food and, what is health and, what are the things that lead to some of these, I guess you could say like chronic things like, I think, who was it? Aristotle, Plato, one of those ancients was talking about how food is medicine.
Right.
And
food is thy medicine. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I remember as a kid, you're sick, here's some chicken noodle soup. Mm-hmm. Like food has always kind of been medicine to me, but not everyone looks at it like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's all of these things are connected. And it's really quite depressing. But again, that's how, there was a study that was done, I don't remember the year, I want to say like 2016, 2017, that found something like 95% of all of the food consumed in Austin is via large industrious monoculture farms. Mm-hmm. And Austin is an area and a city that has a lot of local family farms, right? Mm-hmm. More than a lot of cities. I just remember when I read this study thinking like, wow, if we're barely getting up to 95% of our food is consumed or purchased and grown locally. Mm-hmm. Like that just was real. That was a real bummer, to think about. Like, I think Austin does a pretty good job. At least maybe it's just an echo chamber because the circles and the spaces that I live in, all my people are going to farmers market that's importing local farmers and ranchers and whatnot. So maybe it's just my echo chamber thinking, wow, that really shocked me, that number. I really thought that we were doing it a bit differently.
It is. And also, when you said that, it also makes me go like, it's a huge wake up call to how many people aren't informed.
Yeah.
About so many things.
Yeah.
It could be anything.
Yeah.
But if you're really in the weeds on stuff and somebody goes, did you know? And you're like, looking at them like, yeah. And today's Tuesday. Like where's the big, when those moments happen, it makes me go, okay, like it actually makes me think of like, how can I get those topics and people on my podcast to kind of like force, for lack of a better term, present
a conversation
that's probably not happening
right
in their echo chamber.
Yeah.
Their sphere, like if you're really into tennis, you know everything there is about tennis. I didn't know a thing about tennis until I was cutting hair for Lindsay Davenport. All of a sudden, I knew a lot about tennis because her life is tennis. My life is not tennis.
Yeah, I mean, it's education. It's a lot of it's like privilege, right? I mean, I'm in a space where I can learn and educate others on the importance of like what food does to you, right? Food really is medicine. I mean, there's so many, early medicine was based on, food and herbs and whatnot. And it really is medicinal. And just even beyond medicine, like just knowing and understanding that there's a connection between what you eat and how you feel.
Oh, yeah.
Is a place that not everyone's unfortunately can be in and can make that connection and can make those choices, has access to that food. Access to good, healthy food is such a important passion project of mine. There is a awesome farm on the east side of Austin called Farm Share Austin.
I've heard of this.
And they do a couple of things. They have like a farm school where people that want, farmers are dying. I mean, the average age of a farmer is not sustainable.
I learned that. They're 60, they're actually retirement age, and they would love it if people would take over their farm.
And we're losing farms space at an alarming rate here in Texas. And so they bring in folks, mostly young folks, that want to learn how to farm. And then they have an actual farm on the east side of Austin. We have bees there. And then all of the food that's produced on the farm is put in these mobile markets, and they go around to food deserts. And there's lots of food deserts in Austin.
What's a food desert?
Food desert is an area where I don't know the exact distance, the definition of like what the distance would be, but you don't have access to a grocery store or a place where you can buy fresh produce.
Oh, produce.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And so they have they're food trucks. And they have these little mobile markets, and they drive around. Like there's one on the east side of the YMCA, for example. So one day a week at the YMCA on the east side, anyone can come and can purchase fruits and veggies at this little mobile market. And they bring in a lot of pantry items to supplement as well. And so they're doing a lot in Austin in terms of making sure people have access to fresh, organically grown food.
And another thing too is it's a shame is that just to also make these things is also not cheap either. And so the cost factor usually is higher. And then it's also one of the biggest hurdles. It is the affordability.
Yes.
You could talk about food insecurity, but you also have the food affordability. So it's going to be like, well, I could choose this or I could choose that, but I can get like 2 apples or I can get like 12. And the 12 apples were not farmed with, they have a lot of stuff on them, probably sprayed with them. They're probably doing some sort of a seed in that thing, and that if an insect eats it, it dies, and you're consuming this. And then what happens is but those 12 apples last like 2 weeks.
Right.
Meanwhile, the other one will last half the shelf life.
So much of the fake monoculture grains and sugars and whatnot are subsidized by the U.S. government, right? So like if you are a farmer that grows produce, you do not have access to the same subsidies and benefits and such that someone that grows wheat and corn and sugar is going to. Now, there's a reason that things made with sugar are so cheap, because sugar is really cheap, because there's
subsidized.
Huge government money because of, it all goes back to policy. And so, it's real. We need everyday people, but we need people at the highest levels of our government to buy into this notion that what healthy, good food is and how to make sure people have access to it. Yeah. And unfortunately, the interests that are in Washington, D.C. don't align with that. And instead, everything in the middle of the grocery store is a heck of a lot cheaper. And that's why. Well,
the guy who does the bulletproof coffee, if you're familiar with him, mm-hmm. I don't know how to say it, I think it's Asprey or something. Mm-hmm. He had it got shared a lot in my circle of friends. And it said, if your grocery store has a health aisle, imagine what the other aisles are full of. Mm. And it made me think of how I shop when I go to any grocery store. I'm like, I'm really only getting a quarter of that grocery store. I don't know what it's going to take for these big changes to happen. I would love to see local governments give subsidies or some sort of thing where the local restaurants, not the chain restaurants, like if you're a one-off or a small local chain, mm-hmm. I'd love to see some sort of partnership between farms and the city or the local government to help get it farm to table food.
Yeah, there's this
conveniently.
There's these great programs for people that get food stamps. So if you go to farmers markets, there's these great programs that I don't know if they've been funded at a state level or like at a USDA level. I would assume USDA, but you can use your food stamps to buy food at farmers markets. And in Austin, a lot of times you can get like a double buck situation where like one food stamp dollar is like equivalent to 2 when you're buying at farmers markets from local farmers. So thankfully there are people, maybe not enough, but there are people here in Austin that are like working. And I'm just so thankful for these folks that are working to make fresh, healthy food accessible and support farmers, local, organic, sustainable farmers,
Oh yeah. I'm like, if I'm buying chicken, I'm going to GeoSim. I'm going to my podcast guest, right? I'm going to in place, generally farm chicken. I'm doing chicken. I'm going there, like we don't buy bread. We don't buy any sort of gluten products because we buy einkorn and we buy the berries and we mill it ourselves. Like we've taken our food to a level that most people would never do. Mm-hmm. Like we also know this, like we buy regeneratively farmed rice. Like we probably spend more money in those things because we also realize like that matters for my wife and I, but it also matters for our kids.
Sure.
Like we want to make sure our kids aren't going to grow up with some sort of thing that could have been preventable from, getting red dye and yellow this and high fructose corn syrup and a bunch of other shit. Because my friend and I were talking, he's like, yeah, but I ate the same stuff that, now that I ate then. And I found it was like a packaging. They showed the ingredients from something from like Breyer's ice cream from like the early 90s.
Oh, right.
And then it shows Breyer's ice cream now. And the ingredient list is about tripled. Mm-hmm. I don't even know what they are, but it's just to see. I mean, I make ice cream at home and it's very simple. It's cream, honey for our sweetener, mm-hmm. a little bit of salt, and then whatever flavoring we're going to go with.
Right.
Good food is very not complicated. My wife makes sourdough. It's not much. Mm-hmm. And so when I start looking at the ingredient list, I start going, all right, wait, we're down to 15 ingredients. I'm like, I can't imagine that being a good thing.
Right. Yeah.
We didn't even style it, or it looks
great.
All right. Yeah. Let me get the loose hair off you real quick.
Okay.
And you said that you usually will go through and just curl your hair after it's been air dried. So let's test that.
Okay, great.
So what are some things you would like people to know about bees and beekeeping or in
this stuff? Oh man, bees are so fascinating. I mean, maybe I'll just like hit you with some of the coolest bee facts about the colony. I think you'll be really fascinated to hear. Do you know anything about a honeybee colony and how they work?
No, I don't. Like I told you, I don't really know much other than mm-hmm. that. If I had a really if we're sick, mm-hmm. we take Manuka honey, mm-hmm. and that seems to help on our throats. I also know that I've had some nurses, they go, oh yeah, these are Manuka things. There's medical grade Manuka honey that they do for really bad infections. I think they found honey that's hundreds of years old and apparently still edible or something like that. I don't know if that's true or not. That it has a really crazy natural lifespan of antibacterial naturally occurring, I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't. Outside of that,
Yeah.
I don't have much.
So honey is it has to be raw honey. So it can't have been pasteurized. So when you go to the grocery store and you see all the plastic bears, like that's all been pasteurized.
Wait.
If it's real honey, which is
Now, that's that word pasteurized seems to get. It seems like it's a dirty word these days in some food circles.
well, I mean, when you heat honey to the degree that they're heating honey in order to keep it liquid, honey has the same properties as hydrogen peroxide.
Okay.
It's incredible. And it doesn't have to be Manuka honey to be healing.
Oh, really?
I mean, yeah, if you go to our website under our blog, I've got a blog about honey in your medicine cabinet, and it's links to all these studies that demonstrate that raw honey is better than over-the-counter cough medicine for kids. It's really good for like tummy troubles for kids. It's great for wound care. Got all sorts of like studies that were linked there, but it does have to be raw because when you cook honey, it keeps it from crystallizing. So that's the benefit to large honey packers, right? Is it can be moved from vessel to vessel easily. I mean, all of our honey produced in the spring is going to crystallize within 4 or 5 weeks once it's in a vessel. And so that means I have to liquefy it before I can bottle it, right? Before I can sell it. And so there's a cost to that. And then of course there's the cost of education of that. If everything is just in liquid form, it's more palatable to an uneducated consumer. But honey that is in a solid form that's crystallized has not gone bad. That's just what happens to real raw honey. That's just what happens to it. And so, but if you heat it, and these honey packers do, then it loses all of the health benefits. And it's not only heated, it's heavily filtered. And so crystallization, there's 4 factors that go into crystallizing honey, but 2 of them are the temperature. And another one is it has to have nuclei for these crystals to form around. So if you filter out all of the pollen and the propolis, which is a resin that they collect from antibacterial, antimicrobial resin they collect from trees. If you filter out all these particles, the honey won't crystallize. So that is why most of all the big brands are going to be heavily filtered and pasteurized is to prevent that crystallization. But now you've got a product that's just left with sugars. You aren't left with any of the bacterial and antimicrobial elements anymore.
Okay, I have a question. I read this. I don't know if this is true, and you'll tell me because this is your area. If you have raw honey and it touches metal, does it destroy the medicinal purposes of honey?
So,
have you heard this before? Okay, so I'm not crazy for asking.
No, it's definitely a thing that circulates. So people are asking about this because they're like, oh, should I not use a metal spoon to eat my honey? You're fine. Use your metal spoon. You're fine. Now, when honey is stored in, like, I don't like to store honey in mason jars with those metal lids that don't have the special like seal underneath, because it definitely changes the flavor of the honey and you get the metallic taste in the honey. Parasol liner. Sorry, that's what the word I was looking for. But no, you're fine to use your metal spoons on your honey.
Somebody's like, there's a reason they used wood. And I was like, well, maybe wood was the only thing that was around for a long time, you know?
Yeah, no, you're fine with your metal spoon. Cool. Yeah, so raw honey is super medicinal and can be used for a lot of things. My toddler calls it honey medicine. You know, he'll say, I think I need the honey medicine.
Oh, my kids, they go, I need the honey, my little. Like, okay.
Yeah.
We do that. We give them that. Or I saw that you made elderberry syrup.
Yeah. Elderberry syrup is so good for you.
I mean, we purchased elderberry, but I figured if we're milling our own wheat from berries, we got to start making our own elderberry syrup. Yeah.
So the reason I was making that was, so we used to carry an elderberry syrup that we had a gal locally. She would take our honey and she would get the dried elderberries and would put in the spices and whatnot. And it just became cost prohibitive that I was like, I don't know that people are going to buy it at this price point anymore. I think it's going to be a struggle. And then we found this gal in East Texas that makes these kits where basically she assembles all the dried ingredients into a bag, a filtration bag, and then you just have to boil it and then add your own honey. And I love that because then we've got a lot of beekeepers customers and they can add their own their own raw honey. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, elderberry syrup is so good for you. And then if you add, the raw honey as well, you're kind of getting a double whammy.
Yeah. Anytime I would get sick, I wouldn't do elderberry. I would actually do oil of oregano. Have you heard about that one? Yeah. And within 24 hours, if I thought I was catching something, it would just be gone. So I'm a total hippie when it comes.
Have you heard of propolis?
I've heard of it. I see it always mentioned on toothpaste.
Yeah. So propolis. So bees gather this resin from the sap of some botanical sources, mostly trees. They bring it back to the colony and it's mixed with a little enzymes and a little honey or nectar. And it creates what beekeepers call bee glue. And it's sort of like the immune system of the colony because the honeybees will actually line all of the beeswax hexagon cells where the queen lays her eggs. They will line it with this propolis before the queen lays to help protect the developing bee from pathogens. And also science has demonstrated that propolis is antibacterial, antiviral, and it's very good for you. And so similar to like kind of the elderberry syrup, beekeepers can harvest this propolis and make tinctures out of it. And you can make throat sprays, but that's why you find it in toothpaste. Because of its antimicrobial properties. So it's one of, people always think about honey as a product of the hive, but there's others. There's propolis. There's beeswax, of course, which is bees do actually produce beeswax from their bodies. They have 8 little glands under their abdomens that produce the beeswax. And there's other things like pollen. The thing with pollen is that so with honey, one of the things that we do and we're very careful about is that bees make honey because they eat honey. And they're sort of like your grandma that cans, right? We can the harvest bounty so that we can have it for later. And so bees actually only have access to nectar from flowers a short period of time of the year. They have to make honey so they have food to eat the rest of the year. That's why they make honey, which has this, for all intents and purposes, no shelf life, right?
Yeah.
So, but the thing about harvesting honey is that we can let the bees finish out the honey making process and then assess how much does this colony need to survive until they have access to food again. And then we can take what's excess and leave the rest for the bees. That's a really important tenet in ethical, sustainable beekeeping that we follow, right?
Yeah.
But with pollen, the only way to collect pollen is to put traps at the entrance. And so if you've got a pollen trap on, you're trapping all of the pollen that comes into the hive. So in order to do it sustainably and ethically, you have to be really mindful of how long you've got that trap on and pull it off so you're not starving the colony of its pollen needs, which it uses to rear brood. And so that's why we don't do pollen, just because it has to be so much more hands-on to make sure you're doing it ethically and sustainably. And then the other product that you can get from a beehive is royal jelly, which you've also probably seen in health food aisles.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That one I definitely don't think is very ethical.
Okay. Hey.
So now there may be collection methods that I'm not aware of, but the only way that I know it's collected is that a beekeeper will make rear queen bees, and they will stuff the cell where the queen is developing, where the larva is developing. The bees will stuff it full of this royal jelly. Then they suck the royal jelly out of the cell, therefore starving the queen larvae. And that's what they use. So
sounds horrible.
Yeah, it's not great. And then venom. We didn't talk about venom's another one that can be harvested. Apitherapy is a big thing. So there's lots of products from a hive beyond just your honey.
Would Austin, or any city for that matter, be better off if there was some sort of city initiative to have more beehives and colonies strategically placed throughout the city?
There is. So Austin is what's called a bee city. So the Xerces Society, which is a nonprofit dedicated to the promotion of native bees here in the United States, has this designation that cities can apply for. And Austin was designated a Xerces Bee City a couple years ago. I'm on the committee of that group. So I think in particular, what we need to be doing more of is, like, if people want to become beekeepers, I am here for it. It's awesome. It's So great for the intellectually curious. I love an activity where people have to work to produce their own food, because you realize how hard it is and that challenging when you have to rely on the weather, right? I think that's a lesson that is worth learning for everybody, whether you start a garden or a beehive or you try to raise livestock. But what we all need to be talking more about is how to support our native bees. The nice thing is the things you do to support native bees is the same thing you do to support honeybees. Yeah. So these bee city initiatives are centered around these native bees and doing habitat and not using pesticides and supporting farmers that, are choosing these more sustainable practices. So that's a really great initiative to look out for. They do lots of good things across the city.
It's funny you said you like that people have to kind of work for their food. I have this belief that if everyone had to build their first car, they'd be more responsible with how they drove.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, how did you come up with that? I'm like, well, I had to build my first car. And so I became very protective of that car because I knew the work it took to get it up and running.
Yeah.
So
I went to high school in the late 90s where computers were just starting to become a thing in schools. And we bought all the components and we built our own computers for the school. Yeah. Because that was the most cost effective way to do it at the time. And same idea. Yeah. When we close the gap between people and the food system, meaning they understand and learn more about how food is produced, it's just a win for everybody.
I think people will become truly more grateful.
Whoa, it's impossible unless you have a heart of stone. It's just impossible to not. It's really, it's when people learn more or can experience that feeling of, and it's also so rewarding. So it's more than just like, okay, now I'm educated and I can do more. It's also, I will never forget my first honey harvest and how amazing and precious it was. I still consider every ounce that we produce to be so precious. I'm always like hovering around the team when they're bottling, being like, don't wait, you're dripping, it's dripping. But I'll never forget my first honey harvest and how you had to be really special to have gotten some of that honey, because I guarded it with my life,
And you recently released a book.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember all the little things.
So, beekeep. So at Two Hives, we do a lot of things. We certainly take care of people's bees for them, but mostly what we do is, and we sell honey, but mostly what we do is we do education and agritourism. And so we're doing educational experiences, unique experiences for the public, and then also a lot of B2B where companies can come out, bring their teams and do a honey harvest party or a hive tour or a honey tasting experience. And so through that, we're doing a ton of education. And I teach a lot of people how to become beekeepers. And I've been doing that for a decade now. And I have this immersive 50-hour beekeeping program that goes over 6 months. And I had a text that I would use for this program. And I wasn't really that jazzed about it's called our Beak Apprenticeship. And I just never really found a text that I felt like followed my philosophy and was really biology forward in terms of presenting the material. And so in 2020, at the end of the year, the book that we were using was going out of print. And my assistant was like, don't kill me, but what if you just wrote the book that you wanted to use? So I would get up every morning and I would write a few hours when I got up. And I was just writing the text that I would want my students to have. Mm-hmm. And then, so I wrote every day for 6 weeks and I wrote almost a half of the book in that time. And then February 15th, 2021 happened, and you might not know what that date was, but that was the date we all lost power and water because of the Snowmageddon. We did. For many weeks.
I think because of where we live and what else is on our grid.
Yeah, if you're near a hospital, you didn't lose power. So we woke up, we had no power, and without the ability to work and access internet was the first time I laid and just rested for a long time. And I was like, God, I've not been feeling well. I just feel like maybe I need to go back to therapy. I've not felt right. And then I knew. And I went downstairs and I told my husband, I said, I'm pregnant. And I couldn't get a pregnancy test for days. But anyway, so all outside projects came to a halt. Yeah. And then that summer when I was pregnant, UT Press, University of Texas Press, called me And they were like, we heard about you. We really like you to write a book. Of course, the kind of book they wanted me to write. They wanted me to write the like CA officer turned beekeeper book. And I was like, I'm not going to write that book. But
and shortly after a movie came out.
yeah, exactly. But I've written, a good portion of this book and I pitched it to them. And I'm not the first to write a beekeeping book. There's a lot out there. But I found that the text sort of fell into two categories. You have the like very heavy, dense, almost like reference book style where a lot of information, but it's not accessible and it's very hard for beginners to like even approach it.
Beekeeper for Dummies.
No, so you had that, and then you had the like beautiful books with fun pictures and fun photos, but like not the substance. There's a lot of nuance. It's the hardest ag endeavor out there. I will argue that until I'm blue in the face. And so I thought, can we not have substance, but also have fun too? Like, I feel like that's a line that we can walk, and I set out to do it. And so the book is very heavy on substance and nuance. Like, people get the book and they're like, oh, they'll pick it up and they're like, Jared, this is like a real book. I'm like, yeah, it's a real book and it's a long book. But I hired this awesome illustrator. Her name was Caroline. She's great. And I kind of left the fun up to her. And so she did all of these super clever illustrations, in the book about honeybee nutrition. There's, she illustrated the Last Supper, but about bees. And so the queen is Jesus in the middle. There's all these little Easter eggs in it. And, she's got a Where's Waldo section where we're talking about finding the queen, because that's a skill set that's quite challenging. So she's got a queen bee dressed up as Where's Waldo. It's just like really fun and chock full of little fun Easter eggs throughout. So yeah, that came out November 5th. And so we're just out doing lots of activities and signings and stuff over the next several months to help promote the book and let people know it's out there.
That's so cool. And where can they get the book?
So you can get it. It's available. Of course, it's available on Amazon. You can go that route. That's fine. But you can get it. If you want to like support us the most, you can get it at our website at twohiveshoney.com. You'll find it in our online shop there. And of course, you can get it in person at the Honey Ranch. But yeah, it's at bookstores all over.
And do you ship your honey?
We do. Yeah. You can find our honey. We're in Whole Foods here in Austin. And then we're in a bunch of like the smaller artisanal markets, the tiny grocers of the world, et cetera. Antonelli's cheese. You can find us at all of those places, and we love for you to support them and support us. But for the biggest selection, you have to go to our website. So only on our website will you find like the special single origins, like mesquite honey, which is made from the flowers of the Texas mesquite tree. And it is divine, and fun infusions, our version of a hot honey and whatnot.
I love hot honey. I would probably buy that.
We do one that's infused with chili piquin, which is the only pepper that's native. All the other peppers are native to Mexico and south of there. And chili piquins, if you're familiar, are these little red dots peppers. They're little circle peppers.
I know.
And they are delicious. And it tastes like an elevated version of Red Hots, our hot honey. It's really nice.
I'm going to watch this. I'm going to go, oh, how did I not ask the question? It's so much information to like.
There's so much. Yeah, there's so much. I'm only a text away. If you have a burning, pressing bee question, reach out.
I think I didn't know any of this. First off, like I told you before we recorded, I don't do research. You happen to pop up on my thing because of Brad,
right?
My friend, and it's like, I'm like, this falls right in line with me loving all things food and farming, right? I think someday people probably assume I'm gonna get a ranch. I don't see myself doing that, but like I was like, oh, fucking bees, this is cool. Like, and I just remember all the random little things I've learned about bees over the years from farmers and the wine owners I know who have hives. I was like, this seems like a really cool topic, and it's also like something that doesn't just get like a lot of attention mainstream wise, outside of, Seinfeld coming out with a bee movie.
Yeah. Which is a real missed opportunity, man. I mean, a honeybee hive is all the females in the colony do all of the work. And then you've got a movie like, geared towards children. And instead of like taking the opportunity to like, just one, tell like the real story. I understand we have to have some like artistic license to make it a cartoon, but like in the movie, all these big buff, strong men are the ones that go out and do all the work, when really it's all women in the hive and like ladies in the hive. And what a missed opportunity for little girls to like, one, tell the real story, and two, to like present this like very matriarchal society. Anyway, I have a real beef with the Bee movie.
I thought it was just a fun movie. My kids liked watching it. They got a little sad with when the sad thing happens to the bees. I think it's great. How's your hair?
It looks great. I love it. Yeah, it's great. Thank you.
Better at this length now?
Yeah, it's awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Like I said, I didn't want to bring your length up. I didn't really. I evened it out. It was a little slanted on one side.
Oh.
So I changed that up, and then outside of that, it was really just loosening it up. And then, if you let your hair air dry, you'll have a really nice wave to it. Here in the back, we're just let it blow dry and make it straight. It'll still work out.
Mm-hmm.
If you use any sort of curl enhancing products, anything that's more beach wave, it's marketed, is going to help encourage your hair.
Okay.
The one that I would use and let it air dry, would spray it in. I'd probably just take a towel and just squeeze it together. But what I would use is bacteriology, which is sugar based, so it's not going to have a drying effect like some of them that have more of like a actual true salt base.
Got it.
So that's one thing. The other thing too is the other thing about, because the sugar in it, is when if you did diffuse your hair to try and capture that little bit of that natural movement, what happens when you heat up sugar, it gets shiny. So your hair is not going to have a matte finish, which is another common thing to hair to get very matte. It could feel really dry, but it will get soft and it'll have shine, but it'll still have that nice matte finish. And you could also spray that in your hair, let it air dry, and then use iron. And again, the heat from the wand or the iron will also heat up that product. And then when it cools off, it will set. And then you can run your fingers through it. And you don't have to worry about like, what am I going to use to hold this? And until you have some product in your hair. So I didn't want to add more, because I don't know what you had in there. I didn't want to be like, oh, let me add more stuff. And then it turns into a big disaster. And then you have to shampoo your hair out. But I wanted it to be like a very natural sort of like transition to what you have. Cool.
Awesome.
So twohiveshoney.com.
Yes. And on Instagram at Two Hives.
Sweet.
Spell out the two. If you ever start a business, don't put a number in it, because till the day you die, my gravestone's going to say, spell out the two.
Spell out the two. And it's a TW, not a TO.
Yes. Oh, there's that too. Yeah.
You could have, what about dose?
Yeah.
No.
There's so many things I could have done, but we went with Two Hives. So here we are.
In German. Nobody would know how to spell that one. So thank you so much. I'm glad you enjoy your hair.
It's awesome.
I actually am going to go on your site and look at.
Great.
I use honey all the time.
Lovely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.